the chance that I might get to fly today, that I might get to go up in the air and look down on an imperfect world that looks so perfect from 100 feet or 200 feet above the ground.
When Bob Simmers was growing up, taking a trip in the backseat of a J3 Cub was as normal for him as taking a trip in the backseat of a Chevy. Consequently, flying flowed through his veins, and taking to the air came as naturally as riding a bike. Bob's deeply rooted connections to aviation, complemented by his seemingly natural impulse to give back to his community, has molded him into one of the state's most trusted and respected aviators, whose contributions have warranted his induction into the North Dakota Aviation Hall of Fame. Unassuming beginnings and unswerving humility throughout his successes characterized Bob. His parents, Francis and Irene, valued aviation and integrated aviation with their farming practices, with their life. This upbringing ingrained aviation into Bob's way of life.
Well, my dad learned to fly in the GI Bill in 1947, and he flew missions around the farm in the winter. They had a real bad winter in 47 and 48, so he was delivering mail and delivering pregnant mothers back to the hospital. He was one of the founders of the North Dakota Flying Farmers, and then in the late 50s, early 60s, they had a landed program sponsored by the Flying Farmers, and that encouraged my mother to learn to fly. And in the mid-60s, then she got her private pilot license. If I remember right, her and I went to the same ground school. I flunked and she passed. So I soloed in 1963 and spent the next 19 years flying around the farm. And in 1982, I got my private license. In 1984, I took 13 check rides to go from a private pilot to not only a flight instructor, but also a 135 pilot with all my tickets. Became a spray pilot in 84, and in 88, the spray season was just about nil. I went looking for other work. I ended up in Bismarck, and this is where I still am today.
Within his 50 years of aviation experience, Bob has logged over 16,000 hours, trained over 250 flight students, issued over 300 licenses, introduced countless numbers of young students to flight, and has flown over 100 different makes and models of aircraft.
I've been fortunate in aviation to be able to do a lot of things and sample a lot of the different corners in aviation. And I've flown a lot of different airplanes. I've flown just about every make and model of spray plane that there is. I've been fortunate enough where I've had people come and ask me to do some of the initial flights on their home-built and experimental aircraft, so that's opened some doors to me. I've enjoyed my experience with Cirrus aircraft. That's been a great evolution in our industry in the past 10 years. It's been an honor to work with Cirrus and learn the new technology, and it keeps you young because you have to learn so much.
During his career, Bob has also immersed himself in a broad range of professional organizations, where he has established his voice as a valued voice of reason, wisdom, and experience.
Becoming involved in the politics of aviation is important. Somebody has to do it. And if we don't do that, if somebody doesn't step up to the plate and do it, then we lose our voice and we lose control.
He was able to talk eloquently with the FAA, the head of the FAA in Washington, when we gave our talk, assuring him that unmanned aircraft could come into the state as an integrated group, not taking over the airspace. Speaking of airspace, he talked very strongly in support of general aviation to make sure the airspace wasn't gobbled up by special use groups.
I will never forget being at the Senate Transportation hearing room a few years ago when the team came in with the congressional delegation from North Dakota to brief the FAA administrator his first day on the job. And I remember at the end of that meeting, Administrator Huerta looked over to the team and said, "Who among you speaks for general aviation?" And Bob, in a Norman Rockwell moment, you stood up and your hands were firm by your side and your jaw was stuck out and you said, "I do, sir. I speak for general aviation." And that was the leadership in part that created the environment for the FAA to select North Dakota as one of 6 UAS test sites.
I can't imagine that Bob thought some years back that he wanted to be a pioneer in unmanned systems in the work here in North Dakota. And yet that's exactly what he is, because of what he brought to the table as we launched this impressive and important industry for North Dakota and for the future. We're an aviation leader. And if we're going to stay that way, we've got to be innovative. And it takes distance thinking. It takes people who work in the current aviation structure and can, as I say, look around a corner and see what's coming next and how can their background and expertise help. He's done that in every meeting I've ever been in with him. I've appreciated very much the wisdom that he brings, but also a collegial attitude and a way that is not off-putting. And when he's speaking, you want to listen. He's going to speak with knowledge. He's also going to speak with regard for his colleagues around the table. It's a great characteristic. Those are Hall of Fame characteristics.
Not that I've tried to be a leader, but it seems like that's where I end up a lot of times. And, you know, if you never do anything, you're never open to criticism. And so, you know, I guess I've always welcomed criticism as long as it was healthy and constructive, and that made me not afraid to go out and be a leader. You know, and that's just, I can't explain where that came from other than both my mom and my dad were not afraid to step out and do things.
Though Bob may not have envisioned himself as a pioneer or a leader, Bob's respected voice, his entrepreneurial spirit, his calm and reassuring demeanor in high winds or fire continue to place him in that realm.
Seen him in some challenging situations, notably a Cessna 180 in strong winds into Rapid City. Airline pilots were complimenting him on the skill he had along the way.
If you lose composure, you lose control. And when you're a pilot in command or a race car driver or anything else, if you lose control, well, you're out of business. The old saying is, if the engine quits, fly it. You know, fly it till it lands on something. You know, if you give up before it gets there, why, you've lost the battle.
When I was reading through the quarterly from the Aviation Council, I noticed in there that Bob was a drill instructor in his younger life, and that kind of made sense to me. But Bob is a man that has confidence in what he's doing and what he's saying, like a drill instructor, but he did it in a kind way, unlike a drill instructor. You knew that he understood it, and he was confident in what he was teaching, and that carried through, and it meant something. One thing I've noticed about Bob too is his entrepreneurial spirit. When I first met him, he had written his own software to do the billing for aircraft management services. He had some software he was using for farming, and when they started aircraft management services, he had hangar plans, he had expansion plans, and it was bigger than I could see it at that time. And one thing that he's instilled with all of what he's done is to take care of his employees and his people.
One person can only do so much, and it's important to cultivate relationships where people feel free to do good things with you and around you.
On his way to building a successful business and career based on respect and relationships, Bob gives credit to numerous people along the way and makes sure to reciprocate the same sort of encouragement he received within his own instruction and growth as a pilot.
Beth Lucy was probably the best flight instructor I've ever worked with. She recognized the challenge and always prepared for that challenge. She taught me to understand that you need to know your student well, and you need to know what their capabilities are, and you need to know what good qualities they possess and how to get them out, and then to be ready for those challenges, you know, to make sure that you're challenging that student on a daily basis. She saw something in me that nobody else saw.
He had a gift for recognizing and preserving somebody's aviation dream and encouraging them to accomplish that. I'm proud to say that Bob Simmers is one of the guys that opened the doors for me to do this and taught me. And he truly is a master at his craft.
As a flight instructor and a fellow pilot, Bob is among the top. He was always a challenge for me. He knew his stuff. He knew regulations, knew aircraft, he knew weather.
I also learned a lot about how to treat people. I learned about aerodynamics, I learned about how to instruct, and I learned how to be a friend to somebody in aviation.
And it gives me an opportunity as I flight instruct to pass on, to another generation what I've learned, and hopefully they're smarter than I am, and we'll learn a lot from what I did and what others have done, so they don't have to do them again. One of the real lessons in my life is to listen to those that have been there and done that.
Bob's career, which balances passion and practicality, also provides him with the means to carry out the spirit of service that has been ingrained in him since he was young.
My mom and dad, even though they were farmers that were individual businessmen, they taught me the need to be involved in the community and to give back to the community, and that was a great lesson from them.
They were always having a fundraiser for a cancer organization or for a hospital. He had obviously a heart for people other than his own self and his own interests.
As a community member, Bob was incredible. Between him and Carol, his wife, they put so much effort into helping others. They put their heart and soul into the charities, the church, and a lot of people are better off for it.
Hosting career days out here and getting 700 elementary students through our doors, and exposing them to all the different avenues of aviation is just really gratifying to see that happen. That's where the future of aviation is. It's in the young people. We need to get young people involved. We need to get them enthused, and we need to catch a few of them and keep them in aviation as a career. It's important that we give. It's not about receiving. It's about giving, and that's the way I feel.
Bob's sphere of influence is wide, and while Bob hesitates to talk about his legacy exists and is painted by a sincere passion, service to his community, and is completed by the lives he has touched.
I don't think I have any special dreams or anything about any kind of a legacy other than that we had a good time and we enjoyed life, that we treated everybody fairly, with respect. We came here with nothing and we're going to leave with nothing, so that's the way it is.
Like his mother and father before him, Bob has transferred his love of aviation to his own family.
Well, having my dad in the Hall of Fame is quite an honor for our family. I think it's natural for most kids to think of their dad as their hero and their Superman, so for us it's kind of a natural thing to see him there.
Bob Simmers enjoys life to the fullest, a man of adventure who enjoys racing cars, skiing and hunting. He also embraces the freedom and peace of flying and the opportunities that have come with it.
To me, there's nothing better than just getting in the old 180 here or a Cub or something and just going up in the freedom of flight to go where you want to go, do what you want to do, look at what you want to look at, and come back before the gas tank runs out. We've gone places and done things that we'd have never gotten to do if it hadn't have been for aviation.
Bob's soul is in aviation. It is his medium, the way he expresses himself, the way he builds himself and others. It is the lens through which he sees the world and gives back to it.